Hello everybody, welcome back. My name is Daniel Rader, and this is the second video on the Unit 1 Summative Assessment for Participation in Government. And in this video, we're going to examine various strategies that we can employ as teachers to help our students with the creation of their podcasts in synchronous virtual instructional formats. So I want to start off with this worksheet from Passport to Socialized Curriculum Office as a launching pad for helping your students to decide the format that will work best for them in the creation of their podcasts. If you choose to have students work in groups, one useful opening activity that you may want to try is to have students go into different breakout rooms, and within their breakout rooms on Zoom, you can have one student assigned to choose the interview, one student assigned to choose storytelling, conversational, panel, and monologue. And then within the breakout rooms, have the student watch their own video independently, and then to collectively share out what they learned and what they liked about each of the format styles, and then for them to collaboratively identify a format that would work best for them. Likewise, if you choose to have your students work independently, it can be quite effective to have students who are interested in different formats in the same breakout rooms to just share out what the relative strengths are of any given format so that they can decide for themselves what format they want to use when creating their podcast. In this PowerPoint, I combined all of the Google Slide presentations for each of the extensions A to E for the podcasting lessons. As I mentioned in our last video, you may not need to use all 5 extensions. You may pick and choose the ones that will work best for you. In the very first lesson, it is designed for students to think about what their possible ideas might be for a podcast and how they can best tell their story. I would want to draw your attention to some of the note to teacher slides, and these are also some of the slides that I put in from different lessons. So if you choose to do extension A, this lesson would be best completed prior to day 17, when they will do a lesson on jury selection in Unit 1. But of course, use your own discretion in determining where it fits best into your narrative of the scope of the unit. It may be necessary to dedicate more than one class meeting to the drafting and revision of podcast scripts, which is talked about more extensively in extension E. But it is something that you may want to consider in terms of students, especially if they're working within a group. And if you want to see more specific ways to set up group-specific chats, please click on the hyperlink underneath the Notes Teachers, and you can find a useful guide. If students are using a New York City Department of Education iPad instead of the Audacity app, it's recommended that students utilize GarageBand on their cell phones to edit and revise their audio within their podcast. And it comes preloaded into Apple devices. And in the event that students cannot access audio editing software on the laptop device that they have access to, smartphones do come with various integrated audio editing software applications. And if you want to have students look through the applications that are available through TeachHub, one audio/video resource that I've used in my own participation in government economics classes that you might find to be pretty useful would be Flipgrid, because it allows students the opportunity to record video or audio depending on their personal preference. So in the first lesson, the objective would be to explore different podcasting formats and really begin to identify the concepts that they would be most interested in exploring. And to really kind of brainstorm possible topics and concepts, it would be very useful in the introduction and model on the first day for students to really consider what are these topics that are related to citizenship, rights and responsibilities, being or becoming an American, that are the most compelling to them at that given moment. The podcast format worksheet is what they would be looking at in Extension A, and that's why this is the Extension A resource that students could use to pick a format that would work best for them. And then there are some guiding questions that are built into the Google Slide presentation for Extension A that you may want to use for your students. Now, you may want to use all of these questions. You may only want to use some of them. Use your best judgment in terms of what would work best for you and your classes. And again, if we look at just some guidance for instruction, these independent slides could be done synchronously or asynchronously, but it really would be recommended that there is a debrief synchronously with your students so that they can benefit from the collaborative process. In the second part, or part B, we'd want to consider the podcast pitch. So one of the materials you may want to look at, and again, it's hyperlinked here, is Youth Radio's How to Make a Podcast, and consider the ways in which students can best express their story to their audience. This lesson should be done towards the end of the unit of study, so around day 24, in terms of mini unit C, the rights and responsibilities, so that students can have time to really research their topics. You may not want to do this too early in the unit because students won't have encountered the majority of the topics that they would need so that they can really choose a good topic for their research. This slide I included just as something for you to consider incorporating into your own Google Slide presentations, just a basic check for understanding to see how well your students are understanding the concepts in the unit of study. And speaking to this lesson objective, we really want to consider the various podcast formats and really discovering the pitch that will work best in their performance.